Severe driving conditions such as heavy traffic, harsh weather conditions, and exceeding oil change intervals can cause sludge, which blocks your engine's vital oilways. If untreated, it can rob an engine of power and ultimately its life. It's time to switch to Castrol GTX. Castrol GTX double action formula cleans away old sludge and protects against new sludge formation better than tough industry standards. It is proven to provide 25% superior engine protection. Help extend the life of your engine by using Castrol GTX. Castrol, it's more than just oil, it's liquid engineering.
Welcome to another edition of Disability and You. I'm Ganesh Singh, your host. I'll be with you as usual for approximately 30 minutes. On this edition, we'll be discussing autism. Currently, the world is observing Autism Awareness Month, and we recently had World Autism Awareness Day on April 2nd. It is a day designated to raise awareness on the issues that affect the lives of persons living with autism, but more so, what can be done to ensure that our society becomes more inclusive for persons with autism, and not just those individuals, but their parents, other relatives, and caregivers. How can we be supportive as a society? With me to discuss autism is Anjelina Bishmatte, and she's no stranger to the studios. She's been here a number of times. She is the founder and CEO of Samir Uniquely Me, which is an organization that focuses on diagnosis and intervention for persons or children with autism. She's also a parent of a child with autism. Joining Anjelina is Neema Roopnarine, and Neema is a parent of a child with autism, but she's also a volunteer with Samir Uniquely Me. Welcome, Anjelina and Neema, to Disability and You.
Thank you.
All right, so we want to hear from you, Anjelina, first. What are some of your activities in observance of Autism Awareness Month? I know you've been spearheading a number of activities at Samir Uniquely Me. Tell us about some of those activities, and then we can get into more of what you do as an organization.
Thank you, Ganesh, for having me on your program. So Samir Uniquely Me, as usual, we started our Autism Awareness activity in March, and we had a few outreach at different malls, meeting with public, engaging with patrons of the mall, sharing flyers, and just raising awareness for autism. Also, Samir Uniquely Me will be hosting our third Autism Awareness Walk. And
So you're going to have a walk soon?
Yes, it will be on the 6th of April. We also have a workshop for language and communication with our speech pathologist from Boston, Massachusetts. She'll be conducting that workshop at a Ministry of Health.
And that workshop will, who are the participants? Or the
Usually,
target?
Ganesh, we would have it only for our parents, but this year because of the requests that have been made to us, we're open it to educators, caregivers, and generally the public, anyone who wants to do self-develop or who wants to enhance their ability to communicate with persons who are in any ways have a speech impairment or interact with anyone
Those
of those.
persons who are nonverbal.
Yes.
Anjelina, let's go back. You mentioned you guys had a number of awareness or outreaches at public spaces, including the malls. What was the feedback from the public?
So it's still surprising, Ganesh, that for me that there are so many persons, and mainly depends on the region that you go, that the lack of knowledge of autism, the lack of
It's just lack of knowledge on disability as a whole.
yes, that's true. More so autism as a specific invisible disability, and the desire also is there. And what I think is a lot of time we say we work on acceptance, but then we don't get accepted because of lack of knowledge. Because those persons who we have shared about with autism have such great empathy and are very understanding. And I think there will be great acceptance if we can get the knowledge out.
That is true. It's about sensitizing the public, and once members of the public are sensitized, then we'll get the changes that we so desire to have a more inclusive society. Angelina, I want to chat with Neema on her perspective as a parent. Neema, Angelina just mentioned that members of the public are not aware. There's still a level of ignorance as it relates to autism and other invisible forms of disability. Um, as a parent, what are some of the challenges you experience having a child with autism?
Thank you, Ganesh, for having me on
You're
along
welcome.
with Angelina. So, as a parent, when you take your child into a public space, there's if the well children with behavior they have autism. Sorry, they have a lot of behavior issues. So, in a social environment, children they do have behavior issues, sensory issues, and sometimes the child may be having like a tantrum or a meltdown, and you are judged by the other persons around in the same environment. They usually tag you as being a bad parent, that you cannot control your child in an environment that has a lot of people, right? So that's one of the challenging parts of being a parent of a child with autism, being judged. And like Angelina is saying, it's because of the lack of information that's out there. People are not, they do not understand, or they're quick to come up with all these conclusions about how much of a bad parent you are. So generally, I found that at first, when my child was diagnosed, we were told that maybe it's bad parenting, but that's a notion that's not true. It was dismissed a long time ago. A lot of research has been done into autism, and it's not because of bad parenting, but it's one of the things that we have experienced here. So taking him into a social environment is quite a bit of a challenge.
And only a few days ago, in another forum, I was discussing the same issue, where parents are judged, and they experience stares,
Yes.
and then the whole, if you're in a restaurant, the whole restaurant will be looking at them if that child has a meltdown or might have what we call probably an episode or some challenge, and that challenge can be stimulated by the environment, noise, something.
Yes.
But you have the stares, you get the look, you're judged. Has that deterred you from taking your child in public spaces?
Yes, it has. That's honestly speaking, it has. But we do try to take him out a lot more because he needs that social interaction. He needs to be in an environment. And
That's correct. Yeah.
that's why we're pushing for acceptance in all of our awareness campaigns, because inclusion is very important. He shouldn't be left out, not from a social space, not from regular classrooms. He should be enjoying all the regular things like the other the other kids can enjoy. So we are working towards taking him out a lot more, but inclusion is very important. So yes, it's something we're working towards as parents.
And another challenge I've heard from many, many parents is the fact that parents who can't afford a vehicle of their own and have to use public transport, traveling with a child with autism, the heat, the noise in the minibuses, sometimes other triggers can come into play. Because of those factors, they don't take the child to school, they don't take the child for therapy, or they don't take the child anywhere, basically, because of transportation challenges. Is it something that you've experienced, or people that experience?
It's not something that I've experienced because we have private transportation for Liam. So we don't take him into public transportation.
But this is something that I have had experience
Yeah.
with my son. So when Samir was younger, and so I would take him to therapy from West Coast to Georgetown, and I have to wait. I used a minibus. I had to wait until there is a back seat available. There is a seat next to me because he would like to touch. He will keep a lot of song because he's nonverbal. He would make a lot of noise. He would try to reach over to other persons, which was not acceptable. Very not tolerated. And so the noise, the loud music. So I struggled with that for many, many years with Samir. Then we had sometimes have to take a speedboat. So transportation, and I am sure there are other parents now who still face that same struggle. It was expensive. It was a long journey. And yes, it is very hard both for the parents and more so for a child.
And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why the government would have implemented a duty-free concession on vehicles of parents of children with disabilities and also persons with disabilities, to ensure that it can mitigate some of those challenges of transportation. Angelina, remind us of the work. I know you've shared this before in the program, but just remind us of the work that Samir Uniquely Me does on a daily basis. Not just awareness raising, but what are some of the other services that you provide?
Samir Uniquely Me has 2 centers that provide services, and our methodology of work is scientific based, is ABA, and there are other research based programs that we work with our kids, like the eating programs and the handwriting and all of that. But we work therapy based, one-on-one, school based program, intervention programs for early children, life skill program is a big one, and behavioral therapy, and early academic, because we are all about inclusive classroom. So we have to bring our children to that level, those who have that ability for inclusion classroom. And we also do screening. We have a speech pathologist and clinical psychologist who is also part of Samir Uniquely Me.
So you have the experts that provide the necessary
Yes.
screening assessments and so forth.
Continuously, yes.
Neema, I want to ask you about identification. How young was your child diagnosed with autism?
He was diagnosed with autism at just over 3 years. He was just over 3 years old, and this was post-COVID, and he had gone to his pediatrician for a checkup, and based on what his behavior in the pediatrician's room, he recommended that we see a child psychologist because he identified some early signs of, at that time, he said ADHD. So we did take him to the child psychologist, and she recognized some of the signs of autism in him. And then she recommended Samir Uniquely Me to us. It was during Autism Awareness Month in the year that he was diagnosed, and so that's how I got on to Anjelina as well, to get the diagnosis done. Yeah.
And how important it is to get early identification or an assessment done early for children with autism?
So it's very important because you need to start dealing with the challenging behaviors. He was in a regular classroom prior to being full-time in his program, his therapy-based program now. He was in a classroom, preschool, and he was experiencing a lot of challenges there. So the teachers were they usually give you the reports at the end of the week, how was the child's behavior and how he worked in classroom and those kind of things. And so we thought, when we took him for the screening to get a diagnosis done, we thought that it's important to deal with all these issues, well, not issues, but all these challenging things that he's having, behavior, his motor skills was a little bit lacking, so we had to deal with that. And so early intervention programs are very important for a child to develop. Yes, because you want them to develop to their full capacity. Because it's important to get them to go into.
And I'm happy that you brought to that point that early intervention is critical, and you made mention of how it was done in the case of your child.
Yeah.
Because you have parents out there that are still, in denial. They might have a 4-year-old that that might not be achieving the different milestones that are expected of a 4-year-old. And, we have a culture in Ghana where the older folks will tell you, yeah, they're a late developer.
Wait, yeah.
They'll, you give the child something to eat so the child wouldn't speak, those kinds of things. And you just leave it. And then sometimes it gets very late and the intervention becomes more difficult. So I'm happy that you highlighted the need for early intervention from a perspective of experience.
Yeah, so we did have like the statements that you're saying there. You probably maybe hit his head early on, he fell, or perhaps he was given something to eat.
That he's not supposed to,
Yeah, maybe a parent spoke later in their years, later on as a toddler.
The usual, yeah.
The usual. So we are conditioned to fit into that societal mold, into society's expectations. So, but as a parent, for me, I wanted to step out of that mold and really deal with what was happening. So that's where the early intervention program came in. And after having our screening done by Anjelina, she was able to tell us, advise us, and what after we got the autism diagnosis, she was telling us about the importance of the program, implementing the programs for him, and we went ahead with it.
Excellent.
If I may add,
Go ahead.
Danish, so a lot of time we, as parents, we all want our child, well, from the time a child is born, we have this preconceived idea or this expectation of what we want for a child. And obviously we want them to go to the best schools and regular schools.
Yeah.
What is important after a diagnosis of autism is to find the right fit for your child. Doesn't mean that your child is any less or it puts limitation on your child. But if you can deal or, if you can get the behaviors and get your child to reach the gap or to bridge that gap that now exists, then wait longer for it to expand. If you if you implement programs to bridge that gap early on, then your child could go into the regular classroom and move forward to catch up. Because if you hold them back at that critical point,
they don't have the skills
always
to
be playing catch up.
Yeah, because intervention early, and it's important in all different areas, not just with children who are neurodivergent, but other disabilities. Early diagnosis and intervention is critical for a development on parity with their peers. Anjelina, and Neema, I'm going to pause for a short break. We're going to be back after this to continue our discussion.
As a luxury mechanic, I'm often asked, what gas should I use in my expensive vehicle? In other countries, you have regular and mid-grade gasoline known as 87, 89, and premium gasoline known as octane 93 to 95. For affordable, high-quality fuel, performance, and high mileage, visit Guy Oil today. Choose Guy Oil Super 95. Guy Oil, we are everywhere.
Welcome back. You're tuned into Disability and You. I am Ganesh Singh. With me is Anjelina Bishmatte and Neema Roopnarine, and we're discussing autism. We observe recently World Autism Awareness Day, and the whole month of April is being observed Autism Awareness Month. And I'm really pleased that we have a whole month to raise awareness on autism, because it's a form of disability that, yes, receives a lot of attention, and I know there are persons within the disability movement, have been saying that autism is getting a lot of attention and so forth. However, a lot more needs to be done. And as an advocate, I'll tell you so, because we still have many, many gaps as it relates to employment, education, diagnosis, and so forth for children with autism and other forms of invisible disabilities. And because it's invisible, people tend not to associate it with a disability, because we feel disability is something that you can see, is the loss of a sense or a limb, and that's it. But we don't associate disability when it comes to behavioral issues and so forth. Anjelina and Neema, we discuss a lot about diagnosis, early intervention, parenting, and so forth. I want to ask a very candid question. I want to be very blunt. Do you get frustrated as a parent, Neema?
I do. There are times when I do, yes.
And the reason I'm asking this question is not to put you on the spot, but it's to, it is basically to let people, the members of the public, know that it's normal to be frustrated. And parents who have children with disabilities, including autism, should not feel guilty for being frustrated. So how do you deal with times that you're frustrated? What is your level of thinking during that period of time?
So when I get frustrated, I try to take myself out of the situation and try to be calm. I calm myself down. But for me, it doesn't last very long because I know that it's not because of me that the child is having a meltdown or having a tantrum. His behavior is because he's autistic. So I do not take it out on him. If I get frustrated, I just step out for 2-3 minutes and try to calm myself down. And I do feel bad about it because I will tag myself as a bad parent. Maybe I'm not putting my best efforts into being a good parent towards the child. So you do feel guilty about it. There is that after the whole situation guiltiness. Yes.
Angelina, I want you to jump in here. You've been a parent much longer than Neema, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But you also interact with many, many parents.
Yeah, a lot of time parents blame themselves for it's because of me, and that is something I hear so often. Or they will blame their spouse that it's because of his genetics or because their family like that, or family members are not supportive, and then the parent, the mom most likely, is left with that child to deal, and they have other things to do. Some of them have jobs, and so they become, yes, they may spank their child, they may get frustrated, yell, scream. I've heard this so many times, but it is hard and you shouldn't beat yourself up. One of the things that I would tell parents, tomorrow is a new day. Put your best foot forward. Start all over again. Don't beat yourself up for the bad day that you have. And also what I like to advise parents is don't try to work with your child or implement new things or change things up when you don't have the time or you don't have the energy. Try to do things when you are more calm, when you have time to go through that with your child. For me personally, I still have challenges with Samir. We have worked tremendously with Samir to use his iPad, and now he doesn't want to use it because it makes him stand out to communicate. And so it's
He
frustrating.
sees himself as being different.
Yes.
By using the iPad.
Yeah, and that has come because of society. He was quite doing well using it, but then when he used it in public, he has experienced many times that persons don't have the patience for him to wait for him to put together his sentence because he has to navigate through different icons and categories in the iPad to put a sentence together.
Yeah.
And even though we have downsized to a phone, where everyone have a phone now, the waiting for someone to put his sentence together has become too much for him. So he would literally refuse to use it in public more so. And that's frustrating because there are times when we don't know what's happening with him. And he has the ability to use his iPad but doesn't. And it is frustrating and we get upset.
Yeah, and I can only imagine because we are a very impatient society.
Yeah.
We are very impatient, and it's unfortunate because there are many persons with communication challenges. And us being impatient is frustrating for them
Yes.
when they try to communicate with you. You both mentioned about the frustrations, and this, takes me to the area where we're going to discuss the need for therapy, not just for the child, but for parents, relatives, and other caregivers. How important is counseling for those persons? Neema, I want to start with you.
I would say counseling is very important as parents because there is that blaming game that you play between the parents that you try to, when you get frustrated, you tend to blame each other.
Yeah.
And so that causes issues on its own. So counseling is important there to trash it out, as you would say, deal with what underlying issues you have there. And so for parents, the support is very important because your mental health and your well-being, as a parent of a child who has autism, you need that support. And it's important that you are able to thrive and as a parent, be there for your child, be present, and also deal with everything else that happens around you in your different roles, whether it's at your job, whether it's at home as a parent, as a sibling, as a spouse.
It
These are
is.
different roles that you play, and you need that support you need a community actually, because you
Yeah.
need support for your child in the classroom. You need, if you want to like have a little bit of a time for yourself, you need someone to be able to take care of your child in the way that he needs to be taken care of. And so you need all these different things.
And then just the counseling to help deal with the issues that might occur with the two parents or whoever it is, but
The diagnosis.
helping for them to grapple with the realities of having a child with a disability.
Yes.
And I've seen it. I've been in this system for the past 20 years almost, doing advocacy work, and I see it when persons acquire disabilities, and these are people with physical disability or blind and so forth. Marriages become dissolved. Parents become frustrated of having a child. Child becomes frustrated, or children becomes frustrated having a parent with a disability, and so on. So it's very, very important to have that rehabilitation counseling or counseling to help you understand the realities of living, or having someone with a disability in your life.
Yes, the emotional support to
Yeah,
be there.
that's important.
Yeah, to
It is,
someone.
and it's something that we need to do more of. The kind of council or organization of persons with disabilities is heading in that direction to work with parents to provide that level of support, not just for children with invisible forms of disabilities, but generally, because it can be frustrating. And I've heard stories with parents, and I'm sure you've heard this, Angelina and Neema, you probably experienced it or would have heard it from other parents. If the parents want to go out and they can't find a relative to take care of that child, they can't go anywhere.
You can't,
Yeah,
no.
that's
Because
true.
having a babysitter or somebody to stay with that child, it's almost not
Impossible.
impossible, but it's improbable because people
Because
are
you-
reluctant.
Yeah, and you're always wondering if they're okay. Your mind can never relax.
Yeah.
Because to have someone who is appropriately
Trained,
trained or who is knowledgeable enough. For many years, I went through that. We'd never go anywhere. I never go anywhere until my kids had grown, and that's my support system. And then, if you don't have a relative, you have nowhere else to leave your child. What I would say was Samir, because I've advocated and talk openly about Samir, later on we were able to have our community support. This is something that we need not to hide. And again, we talk about not hide your child away. If you talk to introduce him to your community, you will have that. We were lucky to have our community support.
But
for Samir.
it's the norm within our society, it's our culture. That we hide away people who with disabilities. I too, when I acquired my blindness about 20 years ago, 24 years ago, yeah. I isolated myself. I didn't want to interact with people because I subscribed to that culture. I was conditioned because you have a disability, you need to be invisible almost. So I'm happy you raised that, Angelina, that the need for community. We got a couple seconds to wrap up. Neema, anything finally you want to say to parents out there who have children with autism? Any message you'd like to leave with them?
So I would say, so for our Samir Uniquely Me, we're spreading awareness because acceptance is important for inclusion. And if you see these, or we have a list of early signs. I guess if everyone is doing their research in this Autism Awareness Month, they'll be seeing a lot of information about the early signs of autism that you can detect in your child. Go for your screening and put them in the intervention program. Sometimes kids don't need full-time intervention. They probably need support systems, support programs to back them up from where they are. Get your screening done and get your child in your intervention program. Do not be afraid, because I was. I was subscribing to that societal norm that you're talking about, where you just want to lock away yourself. As a parent, I wanted to lock myself away too, and I also wanted to lock my child away. But that's not the solution.
That's not
That's not a
definitely not.
solution. So we are working from Samir Uniquely, me working towards creating that inclusive environment by spreading information and educating others about autism.
Excellent. Angelina, Neema, over your program time. So I want to thank you both for sharing with us and, sensitizing out the public on what you do at Samir Uniquely Me, but more so sharing information on autism. I'll be back next time for another edition of Disability in You. Goodbye.